Okay, now we're all set up to render. Let's go ahead and hide some of these. I'm going to go to the inserts and I'm going to just basically hit the hide button. So when I do this, you notice a lot of the positive stuff got hidden as well, the labels and all that. So that's not going to work for us. But what I can do is I can actually go into some of these. With the auto select insert, I can just select the parts and then hit the H key to hide. And we're done. The next thing we want to do is we're going to add a ground plane. So I'll say Shift A, Mesh, Plane. Let's go to the side view, and we're just going to move this plane right down to the bottom, hit the S key and scale it up, and then we'll hit the S key and we'll scale it up really large, something like that. Great. And with that created, we're going to need to add to it a material. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just basically choose this plastic that we already have. Over here, I want to turn off the floor. I need to make a duplicate of this plastic, and the way I'll do that is by clicking on this little button right here. It says New Material. And I'm going to call this ground. It's still the same plastic, but you can see that it's now called ground. Okay, now with that set, I want to actually add a grid on top of this. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use a different material. So I'll take my principal BSDF, Shift D, move it up here. Actually, move it over here. I need to create a mix shader. So Shift A, shader, mix. I want to mix these two together. So this will go down here, this will go up here, and this will go directly in here. So you can see that this one is going to be very glossy. So if I move the fact all the way to this one, it's our original plastic material. If I move it back this direction, it's very glossy. What I need is I need something to control this FAC, the factor. So what I'm going to do there is Shift A, and I'm going to add a brick texture. And the brick texture, if I just take the brick texture and I put it directly into this surface, we'll see this is what it looks like. And what I really want is I want the brick texture to be kind of squares. So let's take a look at this. So I'm going to take the offset to 0. I'll take the brick width to 0.5. So now we have squares. Now I want to make the scale much smaller. Something like this. Yeah, that looks about right. Okay, now let's hook this back up. Surface, and I'm going to take this, the factor of this brick, and I'll hook it directly right into this FAC. And now we see that we have the plastic is the line, so I want to switch that. So I'll just drag this one down to the bottom, that one to the top. Now we have, I think the lines are still a little too thick, so let's go into the mortar size, 0.01. That looks pretty good. And then lastly, on this particular surface, I want those bricks, I want those lines to kind of go down. And so I'll come over here and I'm going to take this bump and Shift D and add it over here. We'll move our brick over here. And we'll take that, we'll put it into the height, and we'll put this into the normal. And now we'll change these numbers to 1. Now you can see we have that brick texture is very reflective, and it's got a little bit of a bump. Now it's a little too shiny. I'll make it a little rougher, something like that. Maybe right in here. I want a little shininess. Okay, so now we have our ground plane complete. The next thing we want to do is we're going to want to switch over to our rendered view, and you can see our rendered view is nothing like what we were just looking at. And the first thing I want to set up is I want to set up my world, and my world is going to be an HDRI map, and it's basically over here. I can say we're already using nodes, so we'll just come in here, and in our background we can add a environment texture, and so now that we have the environment texture, what I want to do is I want to place this studio lighting in here. This is the one that comes default with Blender. So how do I do that? Well, I'll jump into this open button and I will go to wherever I'm storing my Blender and go into Blender and go into data files and go into studio lights and go into world, and you'll see there's the studio EXR. So we'll open up that image, go back here, and we have the same image here. So that gives us a little bit of lighting. And then I want to be able to rotate this image. So see, as you can see, I can't rotate it. So what I'll do is I'll add a vector mapping to it. And then I also need to add a input texture coordinate. and I'll hook the generated up to the vector. And now over here you can see that all I have to do is rotate around the Z, and I'm able to rotate the lighting nicely. So let's go ahead while we're here and let's pick kind of a camera shot that we kind of like. So let's start with something like this, and I'll hit the Control Alt and numpad 0, and that's going to frame my camera. And I'll hit the home key, which will make it fill this window right here. And then what I'll do is I'll go to View and I'll check the lock camera to view, and now I can actually hit the N key to hide this. Now I can actually move around in the scene with my camera set the way I want it. Next, we need to add some lighting. So you may have seen me do this before. The way I like to work is I like to come over here and grab a new window, kind of split these up. And in here, I'll go into the wireframe mode, and then I will go into View and Area, toggle quad view. So I have 4 views here. Now I'll go up to my light, and with this light selected, I'll hit the G key and I can move it around if I want. But first I want to make sure that I've turned it into an area light. Here we have it. So, and I'm going to zoom out so I know where the camera is. So this slide, I'll hit the G key, I'll move it over here on this side, and then I'll hit the R key and I'll rotate it. And I want to rotate it so it's pointing at my object. And I'll go into this view, hit the R key, and rotate it again. So that has it focusing there. It's a little bright. We'll affect this in just a second. And I'm going to make this just a tad yellow. So just a little bit warm, not much. And then I will go over here with it selected, Shift D, and I'm going to move it to the opposite side. And I'll rotate it down and point it towards the object. And then I'm going to make this one just a tad blue. So we're in pretty good shape now, other than we're way overexposed. So let's go up into our Studio EXR and let's set this to 0.3, and that'll settle things down a little bit. Let's take our lights and we'll make them 500. So if you can see inside of here, you'll see we have this really kind of a rough shadow, which doesn't work well. So let's go back to our EV settings and shadows. We really have high bit depth and the super high cube size, but what we can do is we can click this soft shadows and that'll fix that. Now the other thing you'll see is that we can see the HDRI in the background. So how do we fix that? Well, that's not that hard actually. We just take this background right here and we say Shift D, move it up here, and then we say Shift A and give us a mix shader, and we'll move it here, and we're just going to combine these two. On the first one we have this nice gray background, which I'm actually going to make it black. Okay, and on the second one, if I use the FAC all the way over, you see that we have our HDRI background. So how do I get this background, this FAC, to be this background and still keep the lighting information from the HDRI? That's easy. We add a input light path, and we use the is camera ray as our FAC, and now I'll need to swap these two off, and now it's good. Now notice our lighting still rotates nicely, but our background stays black. That's kind of what we want. Okay, lastly what we want to do is let's add a little bit of volumetric fog, and I'm going to go in here and say Shift A shader, and I'm going to do a principled volume and drop it in here, and I will just hook that up to the volume, and obviously we are completely fogged in, so I can adjust this setting from 0 to 1. I'll leave it at 0.1 right now. I can adjust the lighting a little bit if I want to come into these lights. Let's go to this blue light, for instance, and even if I adjust this harsh, you'll see that it doesn't change too much. So I can move this. I'm going to move this over a little bit just to give a little bit of a blue. I'll go our background color, and I'll maybe make that a little bit of a blue too. And then I can go into my EV settings, and right here in volumetrics I have this start and end, and if I start dragging this very slowly, you'll see that it moves the actual volume to the back, which is kind of cool. Okay, so that's all looking good. Now I'm going to go back, I'm going to look at this plastic texture because I'm not really that happy with it. I'll go into the world object, and I think that I need to get a little bit shinier, and make the bump a little smaller. And then I'll push the scale up a little more. There, that looks a little better. So if I zoom really close in, yeah, that's going to work better. Now there's a couple cool fun things I can do if I want. I can go into the floor and I can say make it emissive, give it a strength. So the value is 1 right now. If I give it 20, you see it really blows it out. I can also go in this value and hit like, oh, let's do 1. But I'm not going to do that. I kind of like this a little more understated. And the last thing I'm going to do now is go into the camera and add some depth of field, with the idea that as we add depth of field, we're going to lose these grid lines in the background. So I'll turn this on. The way I always set this up is I will say f-stop is the smallest possible, and then I just adjust this until I get to where I know what I want, which is I'm gonna focus on this sticker right here, and then I'm gonna just, with the shift key held down, I'm gonna adjust the f-stop till I get the desired effect. So it's kind of fading out over here, and I think that looks pretty good. And there is our render, and yeah, it looks very good. So we'll do one more render. Grab this and turn it to the side a little bit like this. I'm going to adjust the lighting on this one a little as well. Okay, that looks good. So I've moved the lighting around so that I'm getting a little bit more of a highlight over behind the object, and I've got my blue light now coming in from the front. So let's look at my camera settings, and let's just grab this and let's set the f-stop. I think it'll be fine. Let's hit, yeah, I think that works. Actually, I didn't like that last rendering too much. I ended up putting another light in the scene. I copied the blue light and moved it over here, and with this color, let's see what happens when we change it a little bit more to that orange, or to maybe let's just punch it out a little more on that blue side. And now I've defined that edge just a little bit better, and I've got the background scene light and the foreground's kind of dark. It's kind of a little bit of a more moody shot. I kind of like that. So I'm going to play with this a little more, but I think you get the idea on how you can set up your lights to create the shot that you're looking for. So I will call this complete and hope you enjoy it. I might mention that I have a set of KitOps materials called EV materials that do a much better job of creating realistic plastic textures, metal textures, and ground textures. So you might check those out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you online.